and we're joined now by 97.3 ESPN Flyers insider. That's Kevin Durso to talk a little bit more about the Fly Guys. Kevin, my big question as we welcome you into the show, is this an anomaly like what took place over the weekend in Florida, or is this the start of a troubling slide?
Well, I think the answer to that question is to come. It's really tough to say because the fact that you come off of a 12-game point streak like they had, then you go 3 games where you get 1 point, and we're kind of just left looking for answers at this point as to what kind of team this really is. The big thing with the whole month of March was going to be that the schedule was going to get tougher, and everybody knew that. And now you're seeing signs that, the game against Tampa on Saturday goes to a shootout, but that's a game where Tampa's speed and overall skill clearly exceeded what the Flyers had. And then you go to the game against Florida, and they were just completely manhandled, it felt like. And now you've got Pittsburgh and Boston in a back-to-back later this week, Winnipeg on Saturday, Vegas early next week. So these next 4 games in particular are really going to tell the story, and it could go either way. They could either snap out of this and turn it into an anomaly, or they could keep that slide going, and it could tell a whole different story in just a matter of a few games.
Well, they certainly looked listed that home game, that last home game against Carolina, and then they go to Florida with these back-to-back games. Let's get into the 2 Florida games, Kevin. I thought the issue in the Lightning game, the Flyers obviously had no problem putting the puck in the net, and they certainly got a couple goals from the defense, too. That's always a good thing. Robert Haig scored a goal, Ivan Provorov with a goal, and heck, they put up 6 goals against Vasilevsky. I mean, that's something in itself, but they really had trouble getting the puck out of their own end. Why do you think they were struggling so much getting the puck out of their own zone?
It probably comes down to communication as much as anything, but also just execution. It's a matter of completing your passes. This is a team that I think has struggled in passing for several weeks now at times, and there's times where during even their winning streak that they were getting lucky in certain situations. Early in the year, this was something that was really a big thing with this team as well, was getting out of the zone and completing their passes and connecting on those passes. And we're just not seeing it right now. It's just one of those things where coming out of the zone, and it's not all defensemen. This is a team-wide issue. It comes down to everybody being on the same page and finding the best and most effective way to get out of the zone. And what you saw on Saturday was a lot of that. I think later in the game, there was more of an emphasis to try to keep the foot on the gas and try to finish that game off. And you saw a defenseman pinching a little bit still. And even at that point in a 5-3 game, maybe without trying to purposely sit back, you just try to be more attentive to what's coming at you through the neutral zone and be more careful about those passes. But zone exits have been a big problem. And it's really what's been the key factor in watching them come out on the wrong end of some things. This is kind of going back to the 10-game losing streak. They would not get that bounce, or they'd commit the turnover that always seemed to end up in the back of the net. You're starting to see that again.
Yeah, the tough lead to protect, that 2-goal lead. Flyers were up 3-1 in the first against Tampa, and then 5-3 early in the third period against Tampa. They end up losing in that shootout, 7-6, the final in the shootout. Kevin Durso with us, our 97.3 ESPN Flyers insider. Talk a little Flyers hockey now. Kevin, I thought the Florida game was a completely different problem, if you will, for the Flyers, and that's they were vulnerable to the stretch pass. Is that something that the Panthers like to do, they're known to do, and why do you think the Flyers had such trouble shutting that down?
Well, it is something that Florida is known to do, and why not when you've got very talented players on that side? I mean, all you have to do is look at the first goal of that game by Alexander Barkov to see the skill level and the ability to do something when you get the breakaway, when you connect on that home run pass. This is something, to me, that kind of comes back to early in the year when the Flyers would play a team like the Rangers, and this was long before the Rangers turned into sellers at the deadline. But they were very much the same kind of opportunistic team where every time a mistake was made, there they were ready to pounce on it. And for the Flyers, I think in that game in particular against Florida, it wasn't as much of something completely being overly exposed. Every now and then you have one of those happen. You have somebody connects on the stretch pass up the middle of the ice instead of using the perimeter, and it works out. But for it to happen 3, realistically even 4 times in that game, That's too many. Now you're starting to expose an area of weakness, and I think that was just defensemen being in places where they're not used to being, overuse of certain defensemen. They've had to play that top pairing quite a bit over the last 3 games just to try to make up for the absence of other players. You look at Andrew McDonald didn't play on Sunday, so Johnny Oduya's in. Oduya left the game after the second period, so they were down to 5 defensemen. So you're looking at a combination of the fact that they were just shorthanded on the back end. It just kind of what it exposes is their lack of depth at the blue line at this point, because you even take a piece like Andrew McDonald out, and your top 4 suddenly is overworked. You have 3 guys who are being overworked, and you have 3 who are essentially bottom pair defensemen who are having to try to pick up the slack, and it doesn't end up usually working out in your favor.
If they continue to have the injuries in the defensive corps, Sanheim, your thought as to who might come up? I know he's been pretty good in the 18 games since being sent down to the Phantoms.
Yeah, and that's probably the most likely option. It's still to be determined what the status of really either defenseman is at this point coming into Wednesday's game against Pittsburgh. McDonald's listed as day-to-day. That was really the only update that was given. Nothing much more than that, other than that he missed Sunday's game. But that's a telling enough sign that it could go longer. Really have to wait and see what happens when they go to practice tomorrow and get back on the ice and see who's there. Same thing with Johnny Oduya. No real update on that, so got to wait and see what happens on Tuesday's practice to kind of get a feel for who's available and who's not. But if they need to bring a defenseman into the picture to make sure they have 6, it would probably be Sanheim, just because, for one, it's a name that Ron Hextall said he was comfortable with bringing into this situation at the deadline when they didn't make any other moves other than claiming Oduya off waivers. And then I think he's earned that opportunity as well, just for the way that he handled the send down to Lehigh Valley and the way that he's played down there since.
How about Petr Mrazek in the goalie position? First of all, he played both games in the back-to-back. Did that surprise you? And secondly, he was off to the great start the first 3 games. He won all 3 games, only gave up a total of 4 goals. His last 3 games, 14 goals. Are we seeing this? Is this inconsistency out of Petr Mrazek a worry for you?
It definitely is, because, this is kind of the book on him. When the Flyers made the trade for Mrazek, it was very much like Brian Elliott. When he's on, he's really on, and when he's not, he's really not. And you're starting to see both sides. There really is no happy medium here. He's either going to give you a game like he did in Montreal last week and, a shutout performance like that, or he's going to be lit up like a Christmas tree sometimes, So it really does. It depends on what version of him shows up. I was surprised that he got the start in the second game. It was really a prime opportunity for Alex Lyon to get a start there in the back-to-back. And not only that, but while there's the thought that you could look at that start and go, well, it's a way to get Mrazek's mind off of the game against Tampa and the fact that he let in 6 and it's a quick turnaround. You have to put the well-being of the entire team into play as well. And I think that putting a player like Lyon in that situation might serve as a wake-up call to the rest of the team that maybe cut down on the mistakes, because you have to take care of this guy and make sure he's not bailing you out constantly. So it might have been a perfect opportunity. That's not the way Dave Haxtell saw it, but otherwise you just have to hope that Mrazek can bounce back, because clearly the message from Haxtell there was this is going to be his team at least until one of the netminders, either Brian Elliott or Michael Neuvirth, are able to come back.
16 games left for the Flyers. We're talking with Kevin Durso, our 97.3 ESPN Flyers insider. I don't know, Kevin, you tell me, out of the next 4, the winnable game. Pittsburgh at Boston, home with Winnipeg, and home with Vegas. And Vegas, remember, the Flyers beat Vegas in Vegas, so they're going to be looking for revenge. No cupcakes in those next 4.
Not at all. And if there's one positive you can look at in this, without getting too far into the standings and things like that, is the fact that the Flyers are going to play so often over the last 4 weeks of the season here. When they take the ice again on Wednesday against Pittsburgh, you'll have exactly 1 month left in the regular season. So to fit all 16 of those games into 1 month allows for the flow of the schedule to kind of keep going, and any slip-ups you can try to bounce back quickly, and it allows you to try to string together some good games as well. In looking at the schedule, this is not easy, and out of the next 4, the most winnable one might be Pittsburgh, because of the fact that you're coming off of 2 days rest. You can't be happy about the way you played this weekend. If there's ever a time to let the intensity of the rivalry and the mood that kind of game brings and the energy it brings in fire you up, this is it.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh's had some goalie issues, too. Kevin Durso, our 97.3 ESPN Flyers insider, joining us here. Kevin, we love those Flyers minutes, too. I'm the hockey guy of this pairing, too, so we love having you on, pal, and I'm sure we'll have you on again as the season intensifies. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.